Hi everyone. For the article that I was reading about, it's called Orphans, Dwarfs, Strangers and Monsters, The Urban Forests of Los Angeles. It's written by Charles Hood and it takes place here in California. And the map is really about the variety of trees in and surrounding the Olvera Street Union Station area located in the northeast region of downtown Los Angeles. The map itself is a counter map to the idea that Los Angeles is only a quote concrete jungle and post-apocalyptic wasteland end quote. In other words, it's a city devoid of tree life. So Hood's map is really created to dispel this kind of notion. And that's really what the essay is about. The essay focuses on the explanation of tree variation in the city of Los Angeles, specifically in the Olvera Street Union Station area. So what I went ahead and did is created a map to really highlight these trees that he's talking about in the article. And he does start the article off by talking about California and the Native Americans. Basically, the Native Americans had plenty of food, at least the ones in California, so there was not. Um, he specifically talks about necessity to build things like Mayan temples, even though the Maya aren't in this region, but he talks about things like that. And he also mentions that another reason there's a variation of trees is because of the missions, and they brought in things like fruit trees and grapevines, which we make wine out of, but that came into LA through them, and also because something called the City Beautiful movement, which took place between the 1890s, or had its heyday between the 1890s and 1920s. And really, this was a landscape reform and architectural reform kind of mindset where urban planners or city planners were really focusing on landscape and how this can impact civic virtue and social harmony. In other words, kind of bring more civilization, I guess you can say, to the area. So this is also coupled by the early in the 1900s, LA, at least, you know, the people in LA kind of saw trees as the way we see the newest iPhone now. So they wanted the newest, the biggest, the craziest tree around, and they got it. So you see a lot of different variation in the city of Los Angeles for that reason. Another reason is also because tree sales were pretty lucrative. So people got into that industry of maintaining and bringing them in and maintaining them and selling them out to other people. So, like I said, he uses this map to kind of talk about this, and I was able to really put that map on top of the area here in Los Angeles, so you can kind of see his path through what he's trying to create, or what he's kind of walking through um, the reader in the article. And so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to go ahead and start here behind Union Station. And kind of that's where his tour begins, and really kind of show what at least this part of LA looks like once you really highlight the trees and take away some of the buildings, so you can kind of see what's going on there. And so the first one is actually going to be the Mexican fan palm. And so let's go ahead and check that out. And the Mexican fan palm is from Baja. Predominantly, any of these fan palms that you're going to find in LA are going to be from Baja. And what you're looking at here is really an aesthetic versus nature's intention in this kind of tree. And the aesthetic being a very clean tree. You only see a few of the green fan specifically on top, and that's kind of what is inviting, I guess, that the planners have put here for people. And this is kind of in contrast to what the tree is really meant for, or the design of the tree, that the yellow fans at the bottom of the tree, or also known as the beard, they actually protect the tree in case of a fire. So if fire climbs up the tree, those burn off, and then preserving the green part of the tree on top. So that is the Mexican fan palm. And if we look to the right, leaving out of Union Station, walking out, you're going to see this kind of string of magnolias. Magnolias are from the American South, so our southern states here. And you can really find a lot of them in Glendale and Burbank, so much so that you can find whole blocks of them. And then maybe it looks a little bit more familiar through the image of the blossom that it provides. It kind of provides these white blossoms. The leaves are real shiny with like a fuzzy underside. And again, the whole purpose of the article is really to emphasize the variation of trees in Los Angeles. And so again, we're going to just walk through this here. Trying to make it kind of quick here. Try to reduce some of the time of my presentation here. So the next one is the tipu, or the rosewood tree. And the rosewood is from South America. It likes hot climates. It's also known as the pride of Bolivia. And one of the interesting things I found out about this tree is that there is an illicit wood trade for this tree, because of the cost of the money that it brings in through the furniture that can be made from it. Most of it goes to China, and one of the beds that I looked up can cost as much as $2 million made out of this material. So it's, there's like gangs and everything that make it an illicit wood trade. And the reason it's kind of illegal is because it'll clear out whole forest areas. And so I guess they made that illegal, but you have people trying to capitalize on this market here. So from here, we're going to move over to kind of the entrance of the Olvera Street area, you can kind of say. And we're going to focus in on this first tree, which is the Indian laurel tree. And the Indian laurel tree is, well, it's from India. And it's predominant in India and Malaysia. It's actually one of the most common trees in LA. And if you've been to this area of Los Angeles, this site isn't that unfamiliar to you, with the homeless shelters underneath here. Just kind of what goes on here in this region. I don't think that the tree necessarily calls for that, but that's just the site that we get here in LA. And so the next tree is actually going to be the Moreton Bay fig. And the Moreton Bay fig is from Australia. You can kind of tell it's a pretty big tree, and the kind of telltale is those roots. If you've ever seen Jumanji, that kind of sticks out to me. I mean, just those protruding roots of the Moreton Bay fig tree. But it's a huge tree. Again, just a whole different area in which it comes from. And then we're going to shift on over here to the right. And the next tree that we're going to focus in on is the Canary Island date palm. As opposed to the other palm that we saw, which was the Mexican fan palm, you can kind of denote this tree through the large kind of diamonds cut into the trunk, and also it has more of a feathered type of leaf than the fan type of leaf. So that's another indication. And I didn't mention it, but the Canary Island date palm is from the Canary Islands. I mean, that's you would think that's kind of obvious, but anyways. So we're moving over to a little bit further down the street here, and we're going to be looking at these pepper trees. And funny thing about this kind of scene that I took here is that when I originally started this project and I took this shot, there was no trucks there. And I guess like in typical LA fashion, these movie trucks kind of came at, I have no idea how, but there's now movie trucks in front of a still image that I took or from Google Maps. And but the trees that we're talking about are right behind them. They kind of look like willows. They provide a good amount of shade, and it's also known as the California pepper tree, even though it's from South America, One of the reasons it's probably gained its name, though, is because it's been here since 1800, or at least been in LA since 1800, and probably been adopted as a tree of Los Angeles. All right, moving on to, again, going down the street in the same Olvera area, and this tree is kind of gained a little bit of notoriety right now. If you've ever seen Encanto, it's definitely the it's one of the trees or the flowers that's in the movie. Even in the song, I think it's like a hurricane of jacaranda. I'm not gonna try to sing it, but that's kind of how the song goes, something like that. But it looks maybe more familiar in this form with purple leaves that cover the floor. And the author Hood, he actually describes this tree as a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I think that's in part due to the flowers that cover the floor once the tree has been uh, in the wind a little bit, so it makes the floor really slippery. So here we're gonna move over right down this little alleyway and look over to this building, which is for the Olvera area. I'm guessing it's the tour office, but in front of the tour office you can see three trees, all the same. They're called the silk tree or the mimosa tree, and this is kind of indicated by this really bright kind of red flower that looks like bottle brush. And it's actually arrived here approximately in 1918, at least according to the article, in part due to celebrate the end of World War One. So that's a little bit of history trivia, I guess you can say. So to kind of reorient ourselves, I know I've kind of moved the map out around a little bit, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're looking at next. This is over the gazebo in the Olvera Street area. And so we're going to get in close to that tree that's hanging out right at the beginning of the shopping arcade or the Alameda, and that's going to be the Chinese elm. And the Chinese elm is from China, as you can imagine. It has a puzzle piece like bark, so if you look at the bark up close, it looks like pieces of puzzles put together. It's a really firm tree, really hard tree. It's actually known as a really good tree to make a baseball bat out of. And right now it's just currently shading this cross that's here at the entrance of the Alameda. And I actually took a picture of that. I think this was like 2000, I don't know, 19. I can't even remember what year this was, but I took this picture here, and you can kind of see the foliage covering the cross there. That's my grandmother holding my daughter in the picture. And from here, we're going to move actually in through Olvera Street. Part of the reason is, if you haven't been to Olvera Street, is kind of just seeing what it's about. It offers, it's a lot of merchants kind of put together, selling all kinds of different things. From here, they have some shoes. You can buy all kinds of other stuff in the Alameda, candy, stuff like that. But it's a congregation of a lot of people and a lot of shops. And if you move a little further down in the Alameda, you'll actually come across, this isn't in part of this lecture or this module, but this is actually part of the previous module, which is the Zanja Madre. So if you remember one of the articles with water, in LA specifically, the Zanjas were what moved the water in LA, and this is the Zanja Madre. So it was the main source of water for LA in its initial stages. And you can actually see here, I got a photo that I threw of people would come, grab water from here, take it out to their farms, their homes, or whatnot, and use the water. So I thought that was pretty cool. But again, it's not necessarily part of this module, but I decided to throw it in there. Why not? So we'll move over to the next tree, which is the London plane tree. The London plane tree is a hybrid tree, so it came from a blend of an old world and new world sycamore, or plane trees, I should say. And it was thought to be hybridized in Spain, so originally made in Spain, in other words. and then it was brought to Britain, and then it was brought here, and you can kind of see it in its larger form here. It's a pretty big tree here. These are so young that you're not going to notice them, but right in front of a subway if you're in the area. And then we'll move down the street here and take a look at the South African coral. So this one is not something that he specifically mentions in the article. It's on his map, but it's not in the article. So I decided to look it up, take a look at it, and add it in. Mainly because it was kind of in this really off area. You can kind of see how it looks when it blooms here. I thought it was just weird in this really off area, kind of right after you pass the plane trees, and there's like nothing here. But again, just fitting with you're walking around LA and a ton of different plants and trees that you even don't realize are there. But yeah, so from here we'll go across the street in front of the post office terminal access building, and we'll take a look at this. There's two trees here actually. The one's on the right with the green foliage. You're going to see that those are olive trees, and then here on the left are going to be the crepe myrtle. You can kind of see it how it blooms here with the bright colors. Right now must have been like winter time or whatnot when this was taken, but so again, just a couple more trees that you may not have noticed if you're walking around this area. Our second to last stop is going to be our final tree, and that's really the banana tree. You can kind of see that right in front of the Mosaic Hotel, which is behind and to the right of Union Station where we started. And in the map, he describes it, he puts it over on adjacent to the Mosaic Hotel. But I guess since then they've done some renovation or whatnot, but they moved in. So when I zoomed in and looked around, this was the only one that I could find. It looks like a banana tree. It's tropical. I double checked to make sure that is the right one. But yeah, so you walk around, tons of different trees and things you probably wouldn't notice in other words. So to answer the questions, do they work well as complements to each other, the map and the story and the article? I think for the most part they do. They do work well together, but there was a couple inconsistencies, namely with how he wrote about some of the trees and omitted some of the other ones, at least in the portion of the article that I read. But other than that, everything kind of fell into place, and he's kind of funny about it in the way he describes it, even the name of the article. But I think really he's getting at just the quirkiness that you find, and that's probably what I found most interesting about the article is really just his point of view of how the trees in LA is much like the people in it. They're weird, quirky, they're unique. It's constantly changing, but one thing you're always going to find is people, and likewise trees in LA of all different types. So if you ever see or hear, LA doesn't have much to offer in this regard. There's sometimes they're just hidden. They're just hidden behind all the buildings that we have in LA. And take some time, walk around, and check it out. All right. Thanks for listening in.